Hello and welcome to Fourth and One with Faith and Kayla. It's your co-host Kayla.
And you're the co-host Faith.
And we just want to start off by saying, in traditional Lubbock fashion, there is going to be a little wind noise in today's podcast.
Yeah.
To this week's episode, we're doing our best.
Yes.
But unfortunately, Faith, we can't change the weather.
Yeah, the wind is really just like part of everyone's day here in Lubbock. Whether or not you work outside, inside, it doesn't matter. The wind will get you.
It will.
I'm sure it's affecting football practice too.
Oh, jeez. So let's hop into this week's game, the battle for the saddle, Texas Tech versus Texas Christian University, also known as TCU.
Let's just dive into the post-game ice bath.
Let's hit it.
So we lost 52-31 in the Jones on homecoming. It wasn't something that, I'm not excited to have this conversation. I'll just put it that way.
It was definitely a painful loss. They always say for every win, there's a sentence. For every loss, there's a book. So,
wow.
Let's break open that book and see what we have to talk about this week.
I feel like the first thing maybe to even mention is, third quarter is usually, traditionally our quarter. And to break down the score of that game, Kayla, hit me with the scores from each quarter of that game.
In the first quarter, we thought we had it okay.
Right.
It was 14-7 TCU. Second quarter, it was 21-3, 10-14 in the third, 7-7 in the fourth.
Right. So it's like the fourth quarter we aligned fine. Third quarter, we won the third quarter, but ultimately we did not respond to all of their points, which cost us a loss.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
Exactly.
So I think to begin this podcast about TCU versus Tech, we have to mention the obvious, athlete in this game was Zach Evans. And I believe we mentioned that,
We did.
last week. We talked about Zach Evans. Zach Evans and Keandre Miller both rushed for over 100 yards, which is just,
It hurts from our side, but
over 100 yards.
TCU had a heck of a game.
They did.
And on a Tech-centered podcast, you never want to say that, but they played really well.
Right. And I think it's fair to say, Zach Evans and Keandre Miller are athletes. Athletes that deserved that win. They both had a couple of touchdowns each. Moving past that, another obvious, the reason they had such a great game was kind of contributed from our defense.
Yeah, and I think Coach Wells said it best. He said, and I quote, "We played cruddy defense. The bottom line is we didn't stop the run."
Right. And I mean, he said it himself. There's really nothing you can say other than his quote exactly, that it was just that. The defense was just that, exactly. So it felt like we're kind of losing some momentum for sure, losing some effort even. It's kind of like watching a baseball team and watching a guy strike out while looking. I mean, I'd like to see somebody strike out while swinging, see our defense chase after and fall flat on their face.
What frustrates me within all that, Faith, is that we did play well.
Right.
Against other teams, it would have been a win. I think it was just the caliber of this team and the caliber of their running backs that we just weren't able to keep up. For example, TCU had 18 completed first downs. We had 25.
Ugh.
So we were there. We were in the game. And even though the score doesn't reflect it.
Yeah. We had more completed first downs.
Exactly.
Bottom line. That's a statistic you can't even compete with, can't argue. That's frustrating because the score did not reflect that 25 over 18.
So, Faith, we've got the nasty part out of the way.
The score.
Exactly. The fact we lost.
Right.
You can't overlook it.
Can't ignore it.
We're here to report the facts.
Right.
But let's break into the huddle and let's highlight some of the athletes and players that made this game what it was and who did well.
Right. So, as always, we have to talk about Henry Colombi, who's our now starting quarterback. He completed 23 for 41 passes for 344 yards. So he's had better games as far as completing passes, but it wasn't like he wasn't there. He was showing up. It was just kind of like one of those things where it was like we brought in Donovan Smith several times just to finish out some drives there, which was kind of frustrating to see too, because it's like, why are we bringing in him to finish out some drives? But honestly, he held his own, and Donovan Smith did do well.
I think something worth highlighting within that statistic alone is the fact we passed the ball 41 times.
Yeah, which is good to see.
It is. It's refreshing to see that we're not just running zone and drives right up the middle anymore. There's some variety, there's some different play calls, there's some big passes, and even if they weren't all completed, the effort's still there.
Right. In this segment, The Huddle, we always talk about players and plays that made the game what it was. And one play that it's not really highlighted because it's not a great thing, but
it's not exactly a highlight.
Yeah, not really something we want to highlight, but it is something that kind of changed the score of the game for sure. Henry Colombi did throw a pick six directly. If you rewatch that play, he threw it into over like triple coverage and he threw it over his head. It was just like a frustrating thing to see because it was like bad throw. Obviously, guy couldn't catch it, and they picked up on that. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like against a different team, possibly maybe they would have missed that pass or tipped it out of bounds or something, but they caught it and they lead blocked for him and they were able to score a touchdown off of it, which was frustrating. But it is one play that we can't overlook for sure.
I would agree.
It's a big game changer.
And it was LaDainian Hodges-Tomlinson who had the pick six, which was the person who also last week had an interception against Texas.
Right.
Consistently showing off his skills as a cornerback.
Not something we wanted to contribute to.
Yeah, we just have to be aware of those things going forward and just recognize, hey, this player seems to show a lot of strength.
Yep.
This player is someone worth mentioning. Let's pay special attention and be prepared for him.
Yeah, let's put some extra guys.
Let's talk about someone we think somebody else needs to prepare for. Faith,
okay.
I want to talk about Sir Roderick Thompson.
So Roderick Thompson, running back for Texas Tech, had 18 carries for 118 yards. And he had 3 touchdowns. As he should. He had an amazing game.
Crazy.
Yes, I would say for sure, even though once again the score did not reflect his performance, Roderick Thompson had a heck of a game.
And he played above average for himself, and I think shining in the midst of
a loss
exactly is a huge fact, and being able to make those game-changing plays even when your team isn't quite where you want them to be, things like that. But I want to highlight the men up front that led block for him because they had a heck of a game.
Oh, they really did. You can watch any play that Sir Roderick was carrying the ball, and even the ones where he had a touchdown, he had guys in front of him blocking phenomenally.
One of his touchdowns, Dawson Deaton, who was back this week and will be back going forward, literally it was a textbook, let me just push this guy out of your way, waltz your way into the end zone, we're good to go.
And I think
boom, bada boom.
Yes, that's a lot of that's like obvious chemistry and hard work, and that's like, when you get to that 5th, 6th, 7th game of the season, it's like, they don't have to tell, their communication is all in their head now. It's just very much so like, hey, you got this wide open hole if I can block this guy, and you got the touchdown, and boom, there we go. And Roderick had 3 touchdowns to show for it. So he had a good game for sure.
And he was shifty. On one of his longest runs, he dodged 7 tackles.
Yeah.
7 tackles to get within the 10-yard line. And it was...
It was a play that you would put in your highlight reel for the NFL one day because he was very quick on his feet.
Lots of stiff arms. He showed a lot of strengths that we hadn't seen from him at running back that were huge. That quickness in the feet and the stiff arms and being able to make those game-changing blocks for yourself is huge. And for him to have such a good game in the midst of an ugly loss on homecoming in the Jones, I think it just goes to show his leadership on the team, regardless of everyone else's playing and actions on and off the field, in halftime, wherever it was, whatever caused us to play that way, Sir Roderick Thompson didn't let it get to him at all because he still had a good game, and I think that's just a reason for being a leader on the team. So, good game for him. Let's talk about Erica Zukama. We don't have much to talk about.
So wide receiver Erica Zukama, we didn't hear his name until the second half. He was in the game.
He was.
The first half, but...
Which we're glad to have him back.
Right.
I think there's a lot of contributing factors that lead into that, Faith. In my honest opinion, TCU knew he's a big receiver. So they covered him heavily. I think he was double-teamed consistently throughout the entire game.
Got to give it to their film watching.
Exactly. Number 2... having been out and especially on to concussion protocol, I think we were hesitant to throw him the ball. And hesitant, Erica Zakama is one of those people that will always dive for the ball or lay out
he's going to go the extra mile.
And that's a scary position when you have a head injury to be willing to risk yourself to that extent.
Right.
So we really only hit him on small, short passes, slants, quick outs, things like that, where it was like, hey, we know you're going to catch the ball. Here's this. Sorry we're not hitting you with the big plays. We're going to let you heal a little more.
And I think, just to mention, back when Eric was having some phenomenal games in the beginning of the season, not to say that he won't have more of those, I think a lot of those, too, they came with Tyler Shuck. throwing him the ball. So there is this weird dynamic that looks like they're trying to move into as far as Eric and Henry. Because at the beginning there, it was Tyler and Eric, and now he was out, and then now Henry is starting. So it's a lot of like positions,
moving pieces.
Yes,
and
it's a lot of
like
pending things. Like there's a relationship between Henry Columbia and Eric Ezekama that's kind of pending, and I'm ready to see it blossom for sure. And maybe that's why we just didn't hear his name that much.
But I think as much as we're seeing Tyler Shuck to Eric Ezekama, or we saw Tyler Shuck to Eric Ezekama, we're now seeing Henry Columbia to Kalen Geiger.
Right.
And that's becoming the matchup to watch. He consistently has been getting better every single game. Every single game. This week he had 6 receptions for 99 yards, which...
Good game for Kalen Geiger.
Exactly. In a defensive-heavy game like we saw, he showed up, showed out, did the best he could, and he played really, really well.
Yep. I think, going back to that 25 completed first downs, we could contribute a lot of those to Kalen Geiger. So Kalen Geiger and Sir Thompson still had good offensive games.
That goes to show their leadership. They didn't get down when the score was down. They didn't allow themselves to be bothered by the game going on around them. They just showed up and did their job and encouraged everybody else to do their job as well.
Right. And talking about receivers, running backs, we have already mentioned Zach Evans and Keandre Miller, but I'd like to mention him again. So he had 17 carries. Zach Evans, running back for TCU, had 17 carries for 143 yards, which to compare to Sir Roderick Thompson's, Sir Roderick had 18 for 118 yards. So not far behind on yardage for Zach Evans and Sir Roderick to compare the two, but I think it goes to show they had pretty comparable games.
Exactly.
As far as statistics go, and at the end of the day, it's your statistic that wins.
And not to flex Sir Roderick's showing up a little bit, Zach Evans was the first 5-star signee in TCU's football history. And for listeners who might not know, 5-star recruits, that's like a huge deal.
Nationwide, guys.
Exactly. And there's a 5-star rating within a recruit coming out of high school and leading into college, and that just defines a bunch of aspects: their skill level, athleticism, height, weight, all those things, and 5 is the best you can have. So he
was pretty good.
Yeah.
He was pretty good.
He was rated by ESPN as the nation's number 16 overall prospect.
Right, and I'm just curious, what will his draft round pick be?
Yeah, exactly.
Curious.
But I want to just point out that, like, if Sir Roderick is close to those numbers,
Sir Roderick has a shot.
He does. And there's so many things that we say, oh, this wasn't how we wanted it to look, or oh, this didn't go how we wanted it to go. But he's really, I hate to say it, but we're a developing team.
We are, and that's okay because it shows growth in a way. It shows that, Sir Roderick had a better game this game. Colin Schooler showed out 2 weeks ago. So it's like we have different guys having phenomenal games here and there. Like, we'd love to see all of the team have everybody have great stats for one game, and then we'll have a dominating season.
And we're working on that chemistry. We're a growing team, a growing program. There's been so many transitions in the past 3 years that we're getting there.
So many transitions just in the last 3 games.
Exactly.
It's hard. It's hard to adjust, I'm sure.
It's difficult. So you want to talk about a transitioning program? Oh my gosh. Okay, let's spill some tea. There's like drama in this story.
Les Miles.
No longer Les Miles. So essentially, Les Miles was the previous coach of the Kansas University Jayhawks. And over the summer, there were some big things that came out.
Allegations.
Yeah, and, that has, in today's day and age, that has a really big ability to just poof, there goes your career.
Yep.
So, to make a really long story short, KU fired Les Miles, or they parted ways, we'll say.
Yeah.
But it wasn't
do
necessarily
your own
on friendly
investigation.
terms. Exactly. And they hired Lance Leopold, who's a 6-time national champion, a 5-time conference coach of the year, and the fastest coach in NCAA history to reach 100 career wins. So
this guy's pretty good.
Is it a step up? I mean, I would say yes.
But, why did Coach Leopold here decide to come on to the Kansas University after this whole...
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. So he actually is kind of renowned for turning around programs. he had a
then good hire for Kansas University.
Exactly. So he had a 6-year stay at Buffalo, where in his final 3 seasons, he posted 3 straight winning seasons for the first time in 20 years at that school. So he's kind of that person that likes being the underdog and likes saying, hey, I'm here to grow this and change this program. So I think that's why Kansas was like, oh my gosh, Lance Leipold's the guy.
Right.
But I'm excited to see how him and Coach Wells will battle against each other.
Right.
Just because they're both not necessarily, like, I don't want to say new within their program, but they're both fairly new within their program. I mean, you compare a lot of these coaches, the Nick Sabans of the world.
Right.
Who
we won't mention after this last weekend.
Who will be buried underneath Alabama's field. You know, things like that. They're fairly new within their program.
Right.
And they're still in that beginning process, still getting their recruits, still nailing down their systems. And I think it's going to be a game of newbies.
Right.
Because not only that, but we also have people, we discuss it all the time. Henry Colombi's not a seasoned vet quarterback.
Right. And to even go a little bit deeper down the line, Sonny Cumbie has been here less than a year.
Exactly.
I mean, he's familiar with the tech, everything, but he has not been familiar with Matt Wells or our program within the last 5 years. So I think it's fair to say it is going to be a newbie kind of show out to see anything could happen here, but hopefully we see a win at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic, Faith, but X's and O's.
Let's dive into the X's and O's. Texas Tech played Kansas last year, and we actually beat them 16-13.
But that's, although it's a win, and we love to see a win, they are, they're not the best team in the Big 12. So it's kind of a win with an asterisk next to it that was like,
yeah,
I'm a little nervous that it was by such a close margin.
Right.
We're kind of developing a rivalry with them a little bit, which is scary.
But, Kansas is 1-4 this season so far. They're ranked 8th in the conference. So, they lost to Iowa last week, 59-7. So, defense could be an issue for both teams this week based on the scores from last week.
I would agree. And I think this is a opportunity for us to grow and to bounce back from a tough loss at home, and an opportunity for them to try to win. Yeah.
I think that this game for sure is going to be a growing exercise for us in a way. We should be finalizing that relationship between Henry Colombi and Eric Ezukanma. We should be getting our defense prepared for the first quarter, not the third quarter.
Amen.
We should start having those better games at the beginning of games sooner in this game alone, especially because we're playing Kansas. We're playing the 8th team in the conference right now. And we've got to get it under control. We've got to figure out how we're going to nail down each of these games going forward before we start facing teams like K-State the week after.
Exactly.
So, Kayla, who's one of those guys that's going to stand out on Kansas University's team that we need to watch for?
I think we need to watch for Gavin Potter.
Why is that?
Last week he had 7 tackles, 2 solo, and he's going to have his eyes on Sir Roderick this Saturday for sure. Especially
after Sir Roderick's game, every linebacker should be watching out for Thompson this week. So, I mean,
I think we have a good little matchup there, though, between, hey, Potter's kind of showing up as like, I'm this hotshot player, I'm coming off a really big game, and Sir Roderick's like, I'm consistent, I'm down to earth, and I'm going to show you what I've got no matter the score. I'm going to show out, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to do the very best I can despite any circumstance.
I think with teams that don't have winning records or that aren't ranked as high or haven't had a coach for 20 plus years, something like that, with basically growing teams and programs and stuff, those athletic players tend to show out more, which is natural and maybe like an obvious thing to say, but it's like, who shows out on LeBron's team? Well, LeBron, that's why. You know what I mean? We're going to see people like Gavin Potter show out on the Kansas Jayhawks team. So it's like, we will see those athletic people come out and come forward and have great outstanding games, and it's like, if we let somebody like Gavin Potter shut down Sir Roderick Thompson the entire game, we're not going to score that well.
Exactly.
So it's like, we can't let those few athletic guys dominate the field on Saturday.
And I think something that Tech has that varies against that athleticism is that we have players who are able to adapt. We have people to fill spots that are empty. We have the Henry Colombi's of the world who thrive in tough situations. And our ability to adapt is what creates the ability to win games.
Right.
And I think going into this game, as we're leading into it, like, we have, once again, not to harp on the same point, but we have this opportunity to bounce back and show what we have against Kansas. And I'm excited for it. So, Faith, leading in this week's game, talking about everything we're looking forward to, talking about those growth opportunities, what are some offensive keys you think we need to see? Putting yourself in Cumbie's shoes, what would you like to see?
Yes. So I would like to see some smarter plays, maybe. It seemed like last week we were running a lot of the exact same plays back to back, and it's like maybe it worked the first time against CCU and Stradrick had a great run, and then the second time around they closed that hole. So it's like I'd like to see a little bit of different smart plays going forward. You know, I'd like to see Columbia be a little bit smarter with any passes over like 10 yards. I would say it seems like lots of times he's throwing directly into coverage, and sometimes they're great, hits our wide receivers straight in the numbers like we want. But lots of times, too, he throws right into triple coverage and they get a pick six. So it's kind of, you know, and I think that'll come with more playing time, more games under his belt. He's growing too. He's definitely getting better each week. I'd like to see more play action from him though, for sure.
Smoother play action.
Lots of times he has it and it's there. It's just kind of like almost going through the motions attitude.
I do think that's part of the reason they put Donovan Smith in at the end of those drives.
Yep.
Was because his play action, and I intend this with no disrespect towards Columbia, is a little bit more convincing.
Right.
Just because he is more willing to pull the ball and run than Columbia typically shows he is. And I also think that when he hands it off, it's a little bit more like, oh, who has it? Where are we going?
Exactly. And I think it's a stylistic thing for sure, just coming from quarterbacks. I think that maybe it's just Columbia versus Smith. They're not the same, just like Columbia is not like Tyler Shuck, but he does have a little bit more to offer in a different way.
Strengths.
Exactly. Yes.
I think so. I think that really just goes to show that it's nice to have a young quarterback who you can trust to close out those long drives, who you can put in red zone situations and he's gonna get you a score. And that's a huge thing. And Faith, you talk about coaching choices and things like that regularly, and I would love to see whose coaching call that was.
Yes, it's cool to see that whoever it was decided to put Donovan Smith in at the end of some of those drives. You got to give it to him.
I would agree.
It was a good move, whoever it was, and it also gives me a lot of faith in the program that 2-3 years from now, Donovan Smith, who's already getting a lot of exposure right now, hopefully Cumbie sticks around and continues to work with Donovan Smith as a quarterback. 2-3 years from now, Donovan Smith might be leading this pack.
I would agree 110%.
If he's finishing off drives as a freshman,
a true freshman.
Yeah,
I think that just is a big chance that we don't always get. You know, with the exception of OU benching Spencer Rattler, normally you have your starting quarterback in, and he's in for the whole game. Yep. But Texas Tech is showing a lot of variety and trust in a lot of different quarterbacks and throwing some names in there and throwing some people in there you wouldn't normally expect to see.
Yep.
And while at times it doesn't always look the prettiest, it gets the job done. And people like Donovan Smith have the opportunity to shine and show that they can play as an 18-year-old kid when they get to close those drives.
Right, and it's really exciting too, because if you think back to when Tyler Shuck was starting every game, playing full games, they didn't really throw in Henry Columbia. They didn't need to necessarily. You know, Tyler Shuck held his own. Not that Henry Columbia's not doing that now, but it just goes to show that, you know, God forbid anything happened to Henry Columbia, at least we have somebody who's seen the field.
Amen.
Because I don't think Henry Columbia really didn't get to see the field at all before Tyler Shuck got hurt. So it's cool to see that not only are we giving Henry Columbia all of the confidence to be that starting quarterback right now, we're also giving Donovan Smith room to grow.
Yeah, you're growing that confidence.
Exactly.
We love highlighting new people. We love highlighting freshmen. But I would love to hear about some of the veteran defensemen that maybe need to make some small changes on the defense, Faith.
Yes.
Thoughts?
So talking about defense makes me think naturally back to the TCU game when Zach Evans ran all over the field. And I would like to say that is the whole defense, you know, our defense spot that needs to stop runs like that. And I would also like to put it on probably a little bit on leader Colin Schooler, who had such a phenomenal game just the week before. And it's kind of like, you know, he can't do it every single game.
Amen.
That's just not fair to him.
And eventually other teams anticipate that level. So like Eric Izakama, he gets those double blocks.
Yep.
He has two-on-one man at all time. It's difficult to thrive in tough situations like that.
Right. Once you're good, you got this big old target on your back.
Amen.
So for sure, Colin Schooler's being stopped by more than one guy every drive. But I would like to see him come out and have another phenomenal game like he did against West Virginia in this Kansas game, especially knowing after that past game, you know, teams are out to get him now.
Exactly.
After you're named one of the best in the conference, all the teams see those tweets. They for sure see those tweets. It's not just best for Texas Tech. It was for the whole conference. So I'm sure Kansas has an eye on Colin Schooler this week.
And I'm sure they also have an eye on our consistent players, Enrico Jeffers, Tyree Wilson, Jalen Hutchings, Tony Bradford.
Right.
All those guys that are showing up and playing the game, and they're playing hard. Everyone's going to be on the lookout for everybody this week just because it's so new.
Right. I'm ready to see one of those other guys, too, step up and have a phenomenal game like Colin Schooler does every now and then.
So, Faith, we highlighted the highs. We know what we need to improve on. We know what we need to do next week. We're praying it's not a rivalry game again against KU. We don't want Rock Chalk Jayhawk. None of that. We're not here for it. But I'm looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be a great game. And we play at 3 p.m. in Lawrence. And
we do. And I'm hoping to get some more confidence under our belt. We need a win. Texas Tech needs a win. And we don't need to win 16-13 like last year. We need like a 45-12 win.
I would agree. I would agree.
We need that. Henry Columbia needs that. I'm sure Matt Wells would love to see one of those wins at the end of the day. All us Tech fans want to win, but it would be nice to kick the crap out of somebody else.
Oh my gosh, it'd be so nice. So I hope we close the book on those losses. We learn the whole book from that loss, and that we move on. And we'll see you there next week to let you know. Thanks for listening to Fourth and One with Faith and Kayla.